Welcome to the Artist Mindset Podcast. I am your host. On visual tonight, Chris Goslow. And yes, this is my fingers. I just played that little lick there. I was talking to my guest and we just decided that a little music would be appropriate. And because I'm doing this all kind of make it up as you go along style, I wasn't preparing music. And then why not? We talked about it and figured why not just put a little, because I have this keyboard directly below this computer, just the way I've set it up. Anyway, I'm so glad to be here tonight for this episode, and I'm so glad that you are watching, and thank you for watching, and it's just a real pleasure to be doing the Artist Mindset Podcast. For tonight's episode, we are going video as well as audio, and I'm just so glad to have my new friend Ben Hicks here. Ben, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and that was some pretty epic organ.
Well, thank you. The sound does a lot of the work, and my fingers do the rest. And yeah, epic. Yeah, it's definitely epic, and I'm gonna turn that down so that it doesn't upstage us for our great conversation here that is about to happen. But I'm so glad that you could come tonight, Ben, and agree to do this. Or come. Where am I talking to you from?
You're talking to me from Castro Valley, California.
Castro Valley, California, and I am well aware of the Castro Valley area as I used to live in Hayward myself, and I lived in the Bay Area. I'm from the Bay Area now in Sacramento, so really, really cool. So, yeah, so you got a lot of guitars behind you. Tell us about your setup, and this is your home studio space.
Yeah.
What do you got everything you need, I guess, right, to make music at home, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I am currently without an audio interface. I'm the one that I had sort of just decided to die out on me, so I'm currently waiting on a new one of those. But I am set up to record if I'm producing something that I'm going to actually release. And I always like to go into a studio for final tracks, but I can always just record guitar tracks for clients, or which I've done before. And I can work from home depending on the project, which is really, really handy.
So just so we all know, Ben, because everybody's getting to know you, you are a musician and an audio engineer. That's why he's talking all this audio engineer lingo, like interface and whatnot, in case you guys got lost or something. But so you are an engineer, and this is not you don't primarily work at home, but you got a lot of the setup to do it.
Right.
Since they're probably curious, why don't you tell us a little about what you are up to as a professional in the world of music?
So I am currently an audio engineer. I work at a small studio in North Beach in San Francisco. We specialize in post audio for film and TV. We also record a lot of music, and the owner of the studio, Tom Disher, is a very accomplished film composer and incredible piano player also. And so we're set up as sort of a one-stop shop for film and TV, where we can do all the mixing, Foley, composition, whatever really needs to get done. And so there's four of us that run the place, and we can all cover all the bases, but we all have our own little specialties that we bring to the table. And so yeah, I'm doing that, and I still do perform a lot of music, not nearly as much as I used to in my early 20s, but I just played a show at Mr. Tipples in San Francisco on Friday night.
So when you say perform, you're saying guitar vocals?
Guitar mainly, yeah. I have been known to do some vocals on occasion, but mostly doing guitar and also bass guitar.
Yeah, I mean, okay, awesome. I mean, I can certainly relate to that. Most of my gigs are piano based, and that's like my superpower, you could say. And I do sing sometimes too, and more so as I get more experienced at that. But I always was, primarily doing piano from the beginning. Anyway, that's awesome. So, very curious. You don't mind me asking, how did you land what sounds like a posh gig like that with an esteemed composer who's got probably great clients and things?
Yeah, I got really, really lucky, basically. I did, I went back to school for audio engineering, and I was interning at Fantasy Studios, which unfortunately is going to be closing pretty soon.
Right. Yeah, I heard about that.
But I was interning there, and the Audio Engineering Society does a studio crawl every year, and so it's like a bar crawl where people who get invited or buy a ticket, basically, that you can like go to different studios that are on the crawl, just check out what's going on, and then at the end of the night you can go to a designated studio for like an after party. And so I was interning at Fantasy, greeting people as they came in, and decided to go to the after party at 25th Street Studios in Oakland, which is a really fantastic studio, great live room. And I was talking to some people that I knew from Skyline Studios, and a guy comes up, introduces himself, and says he works at this place called Dish Music and Sound. And I said, "Oh, okay. What do you do there?" And he said, "Well, we do a lot of film and TV audio post." And I said, "That's really interesting because that's what I want to get into." And he said, "Oh, well, if you want to come by and maybe we can just get you in as an intern and you can just come by a couple days a week since you're in school and all that." I'm like, "Yeah, it sounds cool." So I went. I met with Tom, the head of the studio, and he asked me to come in just a couple days a week and started doing that. A few weeks later, he said, "Hey, do you want to work here full time?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I've been working there ever since. It's coming up on a year now. So
Nice.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Ben, I met you a few weeks ago at a play in Davis, and for those who don't know, Davis is over here in Sacramento. It's not right next to Castro Valley, and it's a bit of a hike to come out here. And just that fact alone, because you said you were going back home that night, and you're friends with some of the people who put together the Davis Shakespeare Festival or organization.
Ensemble.
Yeah, Shakespeare Ensemble, which is why we were there too. The fact that you were, coming out to support and that, and just your overall demeanor as well, definitely made a strong impression on me. So kind of a positive impression. People love working with a smart individual who also brings a positive energy and is, for lack of a better word, like loyalty. Like even coming out to see your friends to see a play, to me translated well as a cool thing to do for somebody, not just for them. You know what I'm saying? And I can imagine that you probably conveyed something positive, that the guy would have liked.
Yeah.
The interpersonal skills. It's like not just the audio skills. I mean, that's important.
Yeah.
Of course. It's crucial, but having both.
Right. Well, a lot of my job does require very good communication and interpersonal skills, because you're working with a lot of people. Like I'll work with a lot of people from marketing agencies and advertising agencies, and these are people that are not, they're not versed in the world of audio, and there's no reason for them to be. So you, as an audio engineer, I have to be very good at communicating what can be done, what the process is, for people who aren't necessarily as familiar with the real nitty gritty of the work that we do as engineers.
In other words, if I can translate what I heard you said, take the jargon and the shop talk of your field and make it make sense for the layman who is totally ignorant and doesn't, and make them not feel like an idiot for being totally ignorant.
Right.
Am I right? Is there something like that?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, mainly I wouldn't I would say that the people that I'm communicating with, they have an idea of what they want and they have a goal in mind, and they may not necessarily know the sort of proper terminology to use if it's, especially if it's like a music project, or if it's a sound related inquiry, or if they want something different, they might not necessarily understand how to communicate that in sort of the language of the field. And so it's not just like me communicating to them, it's also me being able to interpret what they want. And sort of when they say they want it a certain way, I have to sort of decipher, okay, so we can do this, 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 and this, and then so that we can come to a common conclusion. So it's very much as much as you need to know about like the actual technology, and like you have to have the technical skills, you also have to have very, very good interpersonal skills, just because of the clientele.
Very interesting to hear you say that, because while I wouldn't say to myself, well, engineers don't have any interpersonal skills, because that's not been my experience, but sometimes maybe I've noticed that, technically inclined people are not always, and I'm not just talking about music, but in life, they're not always great with people.
Right.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, that's I know a lot of, I think it depends on the type of engineering that you're talking about. Like I know plenty of, being in the Bay Area, I know a lot of software engineers who don't, because of their job, they don't have to deal with people necessarily outside of their department.
Yeah.
So they don't, it's not as important for them to have really, really strong interpersonal skills necessarily. I mean, not that they're, jerks or anything. It's just that, it's not really the same kind of communication.
Well, I to be fair, I think there's this place in life for everybody, and some people can be jerks because their field or their focus doesn't require. I mean, or maybe they need a jerk in that field. I don't know, but someone with interpersonal skills. All I can say for myself is that I am a sensitive artist, sensitive to the fault. And when I work with somebody in an engineering situation who gets me and doesn't make, because the technical stuff, I'm not an expert. I am not an expert when it comes to engineering, and I know that. So to work with somebody who can get my vision and also kind of work with kid gloves sometimes when it comes to a personal project. Now, you may be working with corporate types, but I can imagine there's a lot of people that if you're great with them and you take care of them as a person, you make them feel understood and like you value and respect what they're trying for, that kind of thing is really important. Not just the technical side, but as a gigging, even just as a gigging musician, I've dealt with, for example, great sound men or sound people. Not just men, I met some great sound women too. But like it shows who, it matters if they're great with me or great with the band. But I've met some real jerks. Like they might have been great with sound, but the personal thing was like not happening. And for us sensitive artist types, for example, it matters a lot, in my opinion.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like how you get along with people is really, really important. I mean, I was kind of, I think of myself as a generally friendly person, and so it just kind of like comes naturally to me. Like I really don't want to make anybody like feel bad when I'm in a social situation. But I agree. There are definitely a lot of people who kind of have a little bit of a power trip going on, and it's not enough to be right. They have to sort of like make sure that you feel like a little, inferior to them.
Yeah. And it's not my place to moralize on that, because there's space for everyone in life. But I think also relating to, for example, who I think of as being my core audience for this podcast, or at least who I'm intending it to be, is people who might appreciate someone who is empathetic and skilled, like skilled at your craft. Like if I hire an audio engineer, I want someone to be awesome. And don't get me wrong, it's sometimes an SOB can be valuable, but there's also a place for, I mean, not that you can't be a nice or conscientious and also know how to get, be tough when you need to be. I mean, there's no reason you can't be both. But someone who understands people and can kind of be conscientious of that. I know that also as a teacher, it is just how my studio is built. It's who I am. It's how I am. Communication is big. It's just who I am. And I know there's other types of teachers out there with different types of styles. And that can work for some people. But I do tend to attract the people who want someone who can talk and get communication. And I think also this podcast is like perfectly at home with that too. Right.
Yeah. I've never felt that, kind of like being a jerk ever really got me anywhere too much. I mean, there's like, especially like what you said, like working with artists and people who are like, sort of exposing their raw emotions to you. It's never really a wise thing to really put people down when they're in that kind of in that sort of a mindset. And I've been an artist too, so I understand what it's like, and I've been on like both sides of things, even on the technical side, being a performer and also being behind the scenes, running sound. And so I get the like where the frustrations come from and how you can sort of bridge the gap, be more clear and more communicative.
Well, empathy goes a long way. And people, whenever I hire someone to work with me, there is a unconscious or sometimes not unconscious little test that I'm putting them through in my mind on whether they get it. Whatever that it is. If they get it, then they get it. I did work with an engineer once who did not get it, and it was painful for me, very painful to work with this guy because of how, I don't know what trip he was on. He was otherwise a very nice guy. I just didn't know him that well, and I really didn't know what would happen when we actually worked together. And I found that because there was a fundamental lack of sensitivity, that it ruined the whole thing, and I quickly withdrew from that situation, and I've not talked to that guy since. And I'm a very nice person, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm not. I just know myself as an artist, very sensitive, and I think a lot of other artists are too. And maybe that's why there's this. I think it's sort of a protectionism of artists, and I think it should be said. There's virtue in being nice to people. Sometimes underrated, like, oh, you're supposed to be the SOB who goes out and smashes on people to get what you want. And certainly there can be that, but I have known for myself that, as a friend said, kill them with kindness.
Yeah.
It's just not my nature to be that overbearing negative type. And I have to own that. And I own that about myself. And I own that about the type of person that I want to talk to, A, and probably have on this podcast, B, but also just be friends with. You seem like, a type of guy who'd be a great person to be friends with, by the way. So let's be friends, Ben. What do you say?
Let's be friends. Let's do that. That sounds great.
Yeah. Well, I think that people who like kindred spirits should stick together.
Yeah.
My hope is that this podcast can be a place for people who will resonate with this kind of thing. And it's not everybody, and great, because it doesn't resonate for you, fine. But being an artist is hard enough. Just being creative is hard enough.
Right.
Hard enough to be creative. Right. So, which brings me to, I just wanted to hear your input on a few little things here. So, couple questions. I'm gonna let you kind of decide how you want to answer this, but what does being an artist or a creative mean to you? If you want to add, what does it mean that you're professionally a creative? And also, what challenges did you have to overcome in your creative journey? How did you overcome them, and what did you learn from that?
So being a professional, it feels really good that I'm able to actually make a living with something that I really, really, truly enjoy and love. But also, it's great to have that passion be something that I can actually market to people who are willing to pay for it. So what challenges did I have to overcome in my own creative journey? Well, the big one that stands out to me is my dad's illness. So when I was 14, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And that's about the time I really started getting into electric guitar. And I initially got into electric guitar because I was listening to a lot of like pop punk, like Blink-182 and Green Day, and I loved the sound of the distorted guitar. And that's how it kind of came about. Like I just like, I think I really want to do that. I think I want to make that sound. And again, it was around the time that my dad was diagnosed, and I just kind of threw myself into it. It was sort of a very therapeutic thing, and I was able to just get hyper focus on this craft. And I mean, there were times, this is sort of like a cliche guitar player thing, but during the summers when I wasn't in school, I would spend literally all day just playing, like all day, every day, just sometimes like 8-9 hours just playing away. It was really, I was able to really focus on this, and it helped me deal with just the really intense raw emotions that were happening, and stuff that I was ultimately like too young to process. I didn't really understand what was going on. I think it finally hit me when I was in college, when my dad finally couldn't remember who I was, and couldn't remember who really anybody in my family was. Occasionally he'd have moments of clarity. And
how old was he when he got diagnosed?
He was, I believe he was 59. And he passed away when he was 71. So that gives you a sense of how long the decline was. And so and then when I was in college, I applied to Berklee College of Music. Once I didn't get in the first time, and then I applied again and got in, and then ended up going to Boston. And that was one of the hardest times of my life, just because that was the first time I was really separated from my family. And that was around the time my dad had a very serious decline. Like I remember leaving for the fall semester and then coming back around the holidays and not even recognizing my dad the first time I saw him. Physically, he looked so different. And then so I ended up coming back after just a year at Berklee, moving back to California. And after my dad passed away, pretty soon after he passed away, I kind of wanted to like live a life more like how he had led. So sort of a bit more traditional, like you have a job, 9 to 5, and you got your commute, you complain about the commute and all that stuff.
You kind of have those things though, don't you?
I do, but it's for something that I really enjoy. Instead, I sort of had this idea. It's like, okay, I need to like wear a suit to work, and like, I need to have like the water cooler talk thing, and so through a series of events, if that makes sense, but through a series of events, I ended up working at a law firm in San Francisco. At first I was really, really excited to be working. I was like, I was wearing a suit to work, and doing all that and doing the grind, and I was taking the ferry to work, which my dad always used to do, which I was really psyched about too. But then I think I realized on my second day of work that I definitely did not want to be an attorney. And we ended up parting ways after about a year of my employment. And then that was perfect timing because it lined up with the beginning of the school year at San Francisco State for their audio engineering program and the extended learning.
Right. And sort of that, the rest is history from that.
Right. And the rest is history. Yeah. And that goes on to where I met the guy at 25th Street and then all of that.
Right. Well, there's a lot of interesting things that you, I mean, just hearing your story is interesting, and the topics and what is relevant. For me, a couple things jump out. One is how many of us as artistic people, whether you're a professional or not, just as an artist, how much of our artistic story is sort of born out of some sort of pain.
Right.
And it's not that I'm one to say that being an artist should be painful, but sometimes the pain of life can have a hand in guiding us to who we are as creatives. And so I relate to that a lot. And like you said, well, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But, it's like, and on the other hand, it made you who you are. And, the 8 hours a day of rehearsing and whatnot, I think every accomplished musician has a variation on that story. I have a friend of mine, Dario Napoli, who's a very accomplished gypsy jazz guitarist. And as an adult who really kind of, for years, was that he called himself a monk, just practicing like 8 hours a day, and is now doing phenomenal things in the world of gypsy jazz. And there's nothing. There's obviously a big part of success is putting your time into that, and whatever ends up allowing that to happen. Maybe it's being socially awkward and withdrawn is sort of what happened for me, and for a variety of reasons. Or maybe it's some other kind of pain or grief that sounded like what you were dealing with. But if the end result is, I can play this thing. I mean, there's a blessing in that, a blessing in disguise, like a silver lining.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I mean, I can't speak for other people's experiences, but for me, the experience with my dad, it really forced me to be honest with myself and think about, you kind of come face to face with your own mortality and the fact that you're not going to be here forever. And how do you want to spend your time, basically? Like, how do you want to spend your time here? And, do you want to spend it making a lot of money? Maybe that is what makes you happy. It's just making a lot of money. For me, I've had periods of time so far in my life where I've been making, a fair amount of money and still have been pretty miserable. And just because of the situation I was in. And so it's just made me realize I really have to dedicate at least a portion of my time to living a life that I really want, that I can really feel good about. And even if that means just making a little bit less money, I'm okay with that. As long as I can, I can pay my rent, I can feed myself, I can live, pretty comfortably. I'm totally cool.
Well, Ben, I feel like inserting this here just because sometimes we think that we're like, oh, we're an artist, I'm accepting less money. But as we were talking before, and it's like less money than what? Less money than that hypothetical person who's somehow making all this money in a job that he hates. And I mean, maybe this is it. This is who you were meant to be. Maybe this is maybe not the most, but like for thus far, for example, just money alone, maybe this is how it was meant to be. This is you at your best. Maybe this is the destiny. And to anyone else listening to this too, whatever your situation, even if you're not aspiring to be professional or you are aspiring but you're not there yet, maybe everything in front of you is the perfect material for you to live your life in the perfect way to become who you want to be.
Basically, it took a lot of planning to get to where I am. I think there were a lot of messages that I heard when I was at Berkeley, where a lot of people would come and talk, and they would say, there were a lot of sort of very general statements saying like, oh, you just gotta work hard, never stop working, and just like get after it, but like not too many people really got into the nitty gritty. Okay, what does that actually look like? Like, what does it actually look like to build a life in a creative field? Because it's not just sort of like a snap of the finger, you just gotta, like work super hard and then you'll just make it. It's like, it takes very careful planning, oftentimes, and a very, dedicated mindset. And also, you have to be, the sort of the classics of, you got to be very good at networking. You got to know people, who can give you work. So it takes a long time. It's certainly taken me a long time, not only to build the career, but just to figure out what it was exactly that I wanted to get into. Because I was a performer for a long time and loved doing that, but it is incredibly exhausting and difficult to make a living. I certainly wouldn't say it's impossible to make a living, because but it was definitely like a month by month thing for me. It's like this month, oh, I made a good amount of money this month, and the next month it'd be like nothing.
Yeah. Well, and just to speak on that, I would say that if if anybody listening is called to be a performer and you love it so much that it's worth it, whatever that means, then that's who you are. That's what you are meant to do. And what I'm hearing you say, Ben, is for you that it was, I forget if you said agonizing or just really hard. That, it's all about the fit. It's about the fit for you.
Right. I definitely felt like as I was going on, I felt my passion for my instrument kind of dwindling a bit. And that's what scared me the most, because I kind of like set a limit for myself when I left Berkeley. I said, if you're ever losing your passion for the art, for the actual instrument, then take a step back. Like, just really kind of reevaluate why you're doing this. And so with constant gigging, I felt like I was just burning myself out, and I was just not getting excited by practicing like I used to.
Yeah.
And so I really had to just like, okay, I got to take a step back, reevaluate, and got more into audio engineering and focused pretty heavily on that. And now with this, the job I have currently, I am able to play my instrument quite often. So I'm not performing live, but I'm as much, but I am getting paid work playing my instrument. Like I just laid down bass tracks and co-composed a piece for a Blue Angel vodka commercial, which is like rad.
Yeah. And if you hadn't gone through all those other experiences, you may not be doing that now.
Exactly. So it's definitely a journey. I think when people are young, at least it was definitely like this for me. Even though people told me otherwise, I always felt like, people's career paths were this straight shot, to whatever they were doing. But it's definitely not like that, especially not today.
Yeah.
Where basically, if you want to build a career, it's really just sort of a zigzag of different events that lead you there.
Yeah. And that was what I heard. The other thing, just to point out about what you said, and it's good for people to know this. If anybody listening is aspiring to be a creative professional, the first thing you want to get rid of is the idea that there's a certain way that it's supposed to happen.
Right.
Consider the source of your information. If you've grown up just watching movies or seeing sound bites and clips of famous people and hearing about how when they were 14 they went to the A&R guy and then they got signed or whatever, consider that some of your information might be just a little bit, just needing to expand a little, because the reality is most of us artists have this zigzagging kind of story. And I think it was very well put in this story. You're talking about how you were, thinking about being a lawyer and gave it a run for a while. And what you said before we started recording was that you decided to not just go to law school, but to actually try it out in the field for a little while, which is a wise thing before you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of your life to go to do something. I mean, and you learned a lot from that. And no doubt helps who you are now, even in ways you might not even realize too, as the creative that you are now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that also helped put things into perspective for me. Made me realize what I didn't want to do. And I think that's a big part for a lot of people in their 20s, figuring out it's figuring out what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And it's important to take that time, to really evaluate, and to have experiences that in the moment might totally be a huge bummer, but then afterwards you can look back and you can think, at least in my case, I can look back at my time at the law firm, and I think I'm really, really glad that I went through that I did that for as long as I did. It was difficult. It was a very stressful environment, and I just wasn't suited for the work. It wasn't for me, and I wasn't passionate about it. And I learned that by doing that, instead of what a lot of people might do, by just going straight to law school and then trying to get a job at a firm or maybe try to go into private practice eventually, and then just realizing this, they don't like what they're doing.
Yeah, well, you mentioned being thoughtful and thinking it through about your music career, and it sounds like you did the same with the law school stint or the law idea, and that's very smart. I mean, it's very smart to explore the realities or get a feel for something in person and the real thing before you make a decision like that. So I think that's a great piece of wisdom. However you figured that out to do that, I think that's really cool. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing is, what I like about this conversation and having a guest such as yourself is that we all have something to contribute to others. And especially when you believe in something and you go for it and you let it happen in your life, and being a creative person or even a professional artist, there's a component of intuition, following some little gut instinct, and faith, and maybe even what you called luck occasionally, but I kind of think of it as like the universe orchestrating things for those who are ready for it. It's an act of faith to be an artist. And so, anybody who walks that path, in whatever degree you do it, you have something to offer others who, even myself being on the path, I can learn from what you're saying, and others who are thinking about it or wanting to get into it.
Right. Well, there's a song from the musical In the Heights, which was Lin-Manuel Miranda's first musical.
Yeah, I saw that in San Francisco a long time ago with my wife.
Yeah, it's a great show. I was first introduced to it because I actually played in the pit for a production of it.
Hey, that's a nice little thing, bragging rights.
Awesome. And there's a song, Paciencia y Fe, which I'm not saying it correctly with the correct pronunciation, but it translates to patience and faith. And the song is about the abuela, the grandmother, and her experience coming from Puerto Rico to the mainland United States as a young girl because her family was looking for work, and just the struggles that she went through, basically being discriminated against, working super low wage jobs, and really struggling eventually to being the age that she is, and she wins the lottery. And so she wins like $96,000. So the song is just about patience and faith. You just have to be patient, and you have to know that things absolutely can get better. You can build the life that you want. And it doesn't even have to be, faith as it's traditionally known. It can just be faith in the idea that you can progress. It's that's a song that really resonated with me, because it's just like, you never know what's going to happen, so you can't give up. You have to at the very least, you have to try. That was my thing. It was just like, I'm going to try my hardest to make the life that I want. And that's all I can really do. But if I don't at least try, I'm never going to be able to forgive myself, when I'm older. So it was, and then eventually it led me here through hard work and a whole lot of luck. So
it's amazing how luck just seems to seem less and less important when you're paying your dues, doing the work to prepare for the opportunities that can come your way.
Right.
And it's clear that you've been doing that. So, Ben, I think that in closing here, I think that it's just what this all is about for me, is that being an artist is a calling, and it's a sacred, divine calling of the deepest order that is personal to each of us in a way that is unique. There's something divine. I remember when I was first getting paid to play in a vocal studio, play piano, and I got a check for $300 for that week's work. And I felt like manna from heaven was coming down on me and blessing me with the ability to pay for my life so I could be this person who I wanted to be. And that kind of power has no price tag. The power to be yourself. And that's for us who are living off of our art. It is so important it lets us do it. It lets us keep doing it. And no matter how, you are getting by in the world, to be able to say, I am following this calling, I am going for it, is truly a miracle. I do believe that we're on earth to live our life, to mean something to us. And for some people, it could be rock climbing or extreme sports, or it could be being a lawyer, and it could be some kind of service orientation or political or community service. There's so many ways to express that deep side of us. This podcast is for the creatives. It's for the artists who are called, whether you're engineering others your dream is to perform for your music for thousands, or something that's even not musical, because tonight is about music, but it touches on anybody in the creative ilk. I think we're contributing to it with this good conversation. Any last comments you want to say before we call it a night? Yeah,
just going off what you were just saying, Charlie Hunter, who's one of my favorite guitar players, he said at a music clinic that, in order to be, if you're the kind of person that can push a wheelbarrow full of cement up a steep hill while getting pelted from either side by rocks from people throwing them at you, if you're the person that can do that and still enjoy it, then making a living as a musician is for you. And but And he said to the audience, I don't mean to try to say that to try to discourage any of you. I'm just saying that you need to have that drive, that passion, and I think that's true for anybody, in any field, not even really creative fields. I saw it especially with litigators at the law firm I worked at. I mean, the kind of hours they put in, it's just, to me, it's just nuts. It's just, they work so incredibly hard for their clients. And they do it gladly. I mean, this was their calling. They love being in the trenches, so to speak, of litigation. But there are plenty of people like me who saw that, and it's like, that's not what I would want to spend most of my time doing. Like with audio engineering, or music in general, perhaps not gigging constantly, but with especially with audio engineering, that's the kind of thing I really see myself spending a lot of time doing, like putting in those late nights and all of that.
It's been a great talk, and just so many ideas, and it seems like we could just go on for hours. And so again, thank you so much. Before we head out here, why don't you just talk again about how people can reach you? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
You can check out our website for my studio. It's www.dishermusic.com. That's DISHER music, all one word, .com. You can get in touch with me personally at ben@dishermusic.com. That's my email. And come on by and get in contact. Come by for a tour. We have a room that's set up for music recording with a live room, isolation booth, and grand piano. We have another room that is a mixing stage for film, which has a Dolby Atmos compliant speaker array, 7.1.4, and another smaller room that we use for Foley, sound effects, voiceover, all that kind of stuff. So come by, and it's a great neighborhood too. It's North Beach, right in between North Beach and Chinatown. So if you like Chinese food, we got that. If you like Italian food, we got plenty of that. So, just get in contact and come by. We'll give you a tour.
That's awesome. So, awesome. So, again, dishermusic.com, correct?
Dishermusic.com, yes. Yeah. And my email, again, is ben@dishermusic.com.
Yeah, so now you know who to go to for all your audio engineering needs. Ben, it's been so great talking to you tonight. And we're going to end with a little flourish on this keyboard doubling as an organ. Here we go.
Nice.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody listening to the Artist Mindset Podcast. Thank you, Ben Hicks. So great to have you, and good night.
Good night. Thank you.